live with Avi Fashal, author of Raising Royalty. We are now in volume 2, and let's chat about these amazing books, Sfarim, that you have put together.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's always great to share what's going on behind the scenes and what we're doing and what's in the works.
So, question. What inspired you to compile Raising Royalty? I mean, you've been doing this work for how long?
I opened Home Sweet Home in 2003, and that's when I had boys who were homeless or didn't have anywhere to go. No yeshiva would take them. They were really on the street, or all different stories, not good. And many of them were on drugs, and almost all of them different bad stories, and not able to get their lives together. So that's when it started, and then I started seeing parents in 2008, and currently I have about approximately 1,000 kids who are under my care with twisted parenting, where I only meet the parents, but I guide parents on how to help them deal with kids who are in crisis. It's a big schus and a pleasure. So along the way, I started hearing and seeing this Dvar Torah and that Dvar Torah, and I was like, wow, look what it says here, look what it says there. And then, did you know that the Chazon Ish talked about how parents should treat kids who are off the derech? I didn't know that. And then I found the Baal Shem Tov said it, Pinchas Mikaretz, and this tzaddik and that tzaddik and this Dvar Torah and that Dvar Torah. And over the years, I had this compilation. And then I decided to write them down. And I have over 6,000 beautiful Divrei Torah and stories of our GEDOLIM on all INYANEI CHINUCH, from A to Z, from regular to crisis to severe crisis. It's all that, and that's Raising Royalty. Teaches us how to raise our children in the derech of Torah through the eyes, the lens of the tzaddikim, and you'd be amazed and surprised at how much information there is. You know, when the yeshiva had 2 kids they wanted to throw out, and they went to the DIVREI, you'll be amazed at what he said. It's just, you can't even believe it. When Mira Yeshiva opened up after the war in Yerushalayim, and they opened up with a handful of Talmidim, and then one of the kids was messing up the name of the yeshiva. What Rav Nassim Tzvi Finkel Zatzal, what he did was incredible. And there's so much information. What Rav Pam told parents how to deal when the kid starts to struggle, and the kid's even worse than starting to struggle, what he's seen work. What do you do when your kids are rebellious? Chutzpah, not, everything. So that it's just so beautiful. And each time you go through it, you open up anywhere, and you start to look at kids differently, because we are kind of ingrained in us. Either we're looking at kids through the lens of the educational system, through the Goyim, the Goyish lens, or through just what we're tense, we have a lot going on. So just like what works quickly, and very often we misdiagnose the behavior, and therefore we don't treat the behavior, and in fact we cause more damage. So over here we can really look at how the GEDOLIM dealt with every kind of situation, everyone. And it helps a lot. I got a beautiful email from a head of a yeshiva in a different country, and he said that he loved the book, and every morning he opens up, he spends 5 minutes just reading, just to get himself calibrated to look at the youth, at the children under his care with the lens of our GEDOLIM, our tzaddikim. And then the way you look at them is different. The way they perceive that you're looking at them is different, and therefore the way they behave is different. And when they misbehave, that's where chinuch begins. The skill of parenting and chinuch begins when the kid messes up. And that's where people are like, oh, he messed up. Well, that now begins your care, your skill. Let's see how you do.
Right.
So I'm so excited to share this with the world.
Amazing. You said you have over 6,000 stories?
Yeah.
In Divrei Torah? Is there any specific one that, I mean, I'm sure there's many, but are there any specific ones that just resonate with you deeply that you want to share?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. We also have a great index in the back. You pick your the person that you're looking for, and you see all the stories and the Divrei Torah and the statements on chinuch. One of the most beautiful ones, I think, is the story of Reb Aryeh Levin Zatzal. He was known as the Tzaddik of Yerushalayim. And he was the father-in-law of Reb Elyashiv, who was the father-in-law of Reb Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal. And he was Tzaddik of Yerushalayim. You know, not everybody gets that name. He did amazing things. But he was a principal of a yeshiva. And he had to deal with kids. So the story goes as follows. There was a kid who was so excited that the school, in those days, there was hardly any food, nothing extra. And they got a treat. Somehow they had this huge tub of chocolate pudding. And this kid loved chocolate pudding. So he went online and he got his chocolate pudding and he quickly ate it. He went back online. And when he got to his turn again, the guy recognized him and he says, "You want 2 servings?" And other people didn't even get one. And he gave him a smack. This kid, he was an orphan. And he lived in the orphanage and he was in this yeshiva. And he got so embarrassed and frustrated and angry that he kicked the leg of the table, and then he was going to walk away. But what he didn't mean to do, when he kicked the leg of the table, it actually buckled under. The whole table collapsed. The chocolate pudding just fell out, was all wasted. Nobody would have any chocolate pudding anymore. And the guy told him, "You're going to the principal tomorrow." And that whole night, he was terrified. What if they throw me out? And what if the orphanage, if I don't have a yeshiva, the orphanage is going to throw me out. I'll be homeless. I have nowhere to go. I have no parents. And how do we know what he was thinking? You'll hear soon. And this is what he was thinking. Couldn't sleep a whole night. And the next day he gets called into the principal's office. He opens up the door, and who's there? Reb Aryeh Levin. Reb Aryeh Levin says, "Sit down. Is it true what I heard?" He says, shakes his head, nods his head, yeah. He says, "If you did that, you must really like chocolate pudding." And then he goes in his desk and he opens up. He takes out 2 chocolate puddings with spoons or wood, whatever they ate in those days. He gives one to the kid and he sits and he goes, "I love chocolate pudding too." And he sat and he ate with him. And this boy decided right then and there, he said, "One day I want to be an educator like Reb Aryeh Levin." And he became one of the top educators in Eretz Yisrael, Reb Avram Ba'aran, and he told over that story. And that's how we know how he felt that night before. It's not liberal. It's not going easy on the kid. It's making an impression that motivates the child to love what you love, to want what you want, to make them better. He could have said, "What did you do?" and he could have done a lot of things. But if the result is not goal-oriented, that the kid becomes better and wants to be better and stronger and has a good self-esteem, then we're just doing damage. And most people wouldn't think of that. There's another great story. There's a Rebbe, and this is not from a long time ago. This is a Rebbe who's teaching now. And a kid misbehaved in his class. And he went ahead and he called the kid over and he said, "In a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to make me a tea. Go outside, make me a tea, and come back in. Everyone's going to think that you're making me a tea, but you know that I had to send you out of class." It's genius. Instead of embarrassing the kid and making him like get angry and upset, which makes it harder for kids, the kid knew, I am getting punished. My behavior is not tolerated. But my Rebbe cares about me, doesn't want me to feel embarrassed, and is going to protect my kavod, my dignity. Everything gets done better. Now, I actually did a video on this story, and then I got an email of somebody who was a teacher, and she wrote that she heard this and she did it in her class. And she says, it's so true. Nobody ever thinks of that. Like, why do we have to be violent? Why do we have to scream and yell? We have to accomplish positive accomplishments and goals that the kid is motivated to behave better. And so many times parents and educators, without the wisdom, they actually cause the kid to get a rebellious streak and behave worse in the future, which just makes their jobs much harder. Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, Shlita, he writes that a lot of times parents or mechanchim go head to head with a kid. He says, when you go head to head with a kid, you cause them to rebel more. makes your life harder, when you show understanding, and you find a way to be mechanech with protecting the kavod, the respect, the dignity of the child, you'll have you'll get the punishment in, the discipline, but you'll also have a better, more well-behaved child. So there's so much that you can go on and on and on. What parents did, the advice for parents when the kid misbehaves, breaks the rules, gets involved in bad stuff. Why do we have to make believe like we have no idea how to be a parent and a rebbe? We have thousands of divrei Torah and also stories. The stories show you how they took concepts and they worked it into real life situations. Like Rabbi Zalman Meltzer, he was once getting frustrated with a Talmud, and he got up and he walked outside for a few minutes. He's pacing back and forth. When he came back in, a few minutes later, he said, "I need a break." And the third time afterwards, the Rebbe said, "What were you doing?" Rabbi Zalman was fahiring the class. But so the Rebbe of the class asked him, he said, I was getting frustrated at the kid, and I needed to remind myself, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha" applies to children as well.
Wow.
So I touched the halls reminding myself, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha" applies to children as well. You can't embarrass them, you can't hurt their feelings, you have to protect their dignity, and you can do all the parenting you want to do within that realm. The reason that we don't is hard. So when we get these ideas in our mind, it really changes us. Also, a lot of parents and even educators, we were educated by people who didn't, it was like post-Holocaust. And it's kind of like, we were hit, so we should hit. We were yelled at and embarrassed, so they should be yelled at and embarrassed. And you'll see GEDOLIM from 50 years ago that said, don't embarrass a kid. It's not liberal. Don't hit a kid. Don't embarrass a kid. Don't yell at a kid. Don't trigger them to feel rebellious. Deal with them according to their level of sensitivity. And within that, teach them. And teach them out of love and with love. And that doesn't mean let them do whatever they want. It means that they feel loved when you finished during and when you finish the intervention. So this is very important for us as parents and as teachers to see the lens of how these tzaddikim never gave up on anybody and always found a chachmadik wisdom way, bina, to save the child and teach the lesson.
Right. Well, that's a great segue into my next question. Is there's a lot of great parenting books and great books on chinuch out there. What would you say makes Raising Royalty different to any of these other books?
There's such great stuff out there. I read so many of them, especially for Raising Royalty. I'm always looking for good stories and good ideas and good quotes, and they're all fantastic. I wouldn't say Raising Royalty is better or worse than them. It's a different type of attitude. It's not practical at all, and yet it changes your mindset of the way you look at the child, which changes everything in a very practical way. Just every essay picks a different type of situation and goes through it, and you hear from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and you hear from Satmar Rebbe, and then you hear from the Litvischer GEDOLIM, and you hear from everything, Rishonim and Achronim, and stories brought down, and it just molds our mindset. As soon as you look at a kid as he's bad, you're going to do damage. Even though you quote unquote, I'm doing parenting now, I'm doing chinuch now, I'm educating. If you think the kid is bad, you lost them. So it's a way of looking at a kid, no matter how they behave, as the truth that we know that they are be'etzem toiv and a chelik l'kamimal mamish. Now, if we really believe that, we approach them differently than if I think that he's a manipulator and he's bad and he's evil. And this is the kunst, this is the trick. When I look at them with the emes, that they are banim atem l'Hashem lekechem, b'ni b'chayri Yisrael, they are royalty, then they know that I look at them as royalty. I look at them as good, not bad. I look at them as holy, not tamei. And therefore, their whole behavior towards me and towards Hashem and in the house or in the classroom, it changes. It changes on how we look at them and then how we deal with them when they mess up. If we show that I don't have faith in that you're good and you're bad and you're whatever negativity, we're just doing damage.
So let me ask you, what do you think? I mean, there's many, but what do you think are one of the biggest challenges that parents face today raising kids? And how do you think raising royalty can be helpful in approaching these difficulties?
I'm not really a parenting expert. I'm a crisis, more experienced with crisis. But from what I understand, one of the things is that a lot of parents and mechanchim feel that there's this like tug of war between I want to be a mechanech, I want to be an educator, and that the world wants me to not punish and not hit and not yell and not scream. And you got to love and tolerate and never discipline. And it's not true. Torah chinuch was always loving. Torah chinuch was always boosting, was always motivating. It's not at all because of liberalism or American that we don't trash a kid and break his spirit. It was never supposed to happen. And if it happened to parents or mechanchim when we grew up, it was wrong. It was just putting together the world. And so a lot of this is like you'll have sometimes couples and one of them will be like, oh, that's so new age stuff and so woke. I'm old school. Okay, so was the Chazon Ish. So was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So was the Baal Shem Tov. So was all these people who were 50 years ago and 100 years ago. And they said you have to be so sensitive to the feelings of children. That's not woke. That's what's the opposite of woke, I guess. Sleep. That's very sleepy. That's the way we've been doing stuff. That's the way it's supposed to be. And you can control and be mechanech and discipline children with love.
Yeah.
Lubavitcher Rebbe said over 40 years ago that in our generation, it's only love. And when you get that from every single gadol across the board, and how to do it within love, okay, plenty of ideas from that on that also. But it's unbelievable. Let me tell you a story. It's in the book, and it's just an incredible story. I heard it from the Rosh Yeshiva himself. This guy has a yeshiva for Mesifta boys who are black and white in the system, but they're not Aleph kids. They're Beis kids. They're not out doing bad stuff, but they didn't get into Aleph yeshivas. They're not so smart. They're a little bit of trouble, whatever. But it's a yeshiva, real yeshiva. Not for kids on the street, not for kids who are doing bad stuff. Good kids. There's one kid who started making a lot of trouble. And his Rebbe kept on complaining to the Rosh Yeshiva and saying, you did this, you did that. And Rosh Yeshiva kept on saying, okay, ignore it, work with him, ignore it, work with him. Things were getting worse and worse. Morning Seder, second Seder Rebbe, complaining and complaining. And the head of the yeshiva, he's a very patient, good guy. And he's like, no, just let it go. I'll work with him. I'll speak to him. You'll speak to him. One day, the Rebbe in the morning caught this boy while he's giving shir. The boy in Eretz Yisrael was watching a movie, during shir, on an unfiltered iPhone, unfiltered internet, which especially in Eretz Yisrael, but anywhere, is just horrible. He's watching in the middle of class. So the Rebbe goes ahead with the second Seder Rebbe, with the afternoon Rebbe, goes to this guy, the Rosh Yeshiva, and he says, Ad Kan, we're done. It's either him or us.
Oh, wow.
So he said, I hear you. I see we have a problem. I agree. But we have Das Torah. So let's go speak it over and ask Das Torah what to do. So they agreed among the three of them to go to Rav Steinman Zatzal. So they went to Rav Steinman, and the two Rebbeim went ahead and said their side of the story. The whole year, kid doesn't behave. He's getting worse and worse. And he keeps on telling us to be nice. And now that's it. We caught him with a video, with a movie, watching iPhone, unfiltered, during. So he turns to the Rosh Yeshiva and he says, so what do you say? He says, I don't know. I know that we are a hospital and we can't throw patients out of a hospital and give up on them. I hired them to work with the kids. And, I don't know what the Eitz is, but just to throw them out? Steinman thought about it and he said, this kid cannot be right now in class with the other kids. So, second Seder Rebbe, second Seder guy, what do you do in the morning? He says, in the morning I learn in Koil. He said, okay. And what do you do? First Seder Rebbe, what do you do in the afternoon? I learn in Koil. He said, okay. So for 1 month, I want you, second Seder Rebbe, to learn with this boy not in the class, in the Beis Medrash of the yeshiva, privately one-on-one. And I want you, morning Seder Rebbe, to learn in the afternoon with him privately one-on-one. And there's one condition: no musar, no looking down at him, clean slate. Come back in a month. What do you think happened? Instead of getting rejection, he got, listen, there's a problem, you're struggling, we're going to learn with you privately. He started to learn. He started to enjoy learning. He enjoyed the one-on-one attention. They started to like him. He started to like them. The Rosh Hashiva tells me, and then after a month, of course, we didn't go back to Rav Steinman. He was welcomed back into class. But you think it's like a TV movie story? No. He didn't behave so well the rest of the year, but they didn't take him personally. They were like, Mati, time for a break for a few minutes. Okay. Went out and came back. There wasn't any of that, because they saw he's good. They saw he's a good to neshama, and he struggles to be in a big classroom. Totally different way. They didn't take him personally. They would joke around with him by lunch. He would say, oh, this is my chavrusa's here. They gave him kavod. He said today, he's a young man. He's working. He's kaveh eaten. He's married. He could have been a drug addict. He could have been on the street. Today, it's pikuach nefesh to throw a kid out. It's one of the most dangerous things to do. And there are stories about that also. Even in the Chazon Ish's time. They wanted to throw a kid out of yeshiva, and they said, he told them, instead of throwing him out of yeshiva, why don't you just take a knife and stab him? Just kill him. It's much easier than sending him out on the street. He said, when there's a mabul, you don't throw a kid out. He said, today we all have a din of Yisayimim, and you don't throw Yisayimim out on the street. 80 years ago. So you're going to say, well, that time things were really bad in Eretz Yisrael because of, all the modern people and all the Freya people. But now it's also on the street. A kid who feels rejection is literally pikuach nefesh. Suicides and overdoses and all that stuff, for sure. So how do you deal with it? You don't throw anybody out. You don't give anybody. You learn how to deal with it in a way that makes the student or the child want to behave. And it's not that hard. It's not that hard.
Tell me about some of the feedback that you've been receiving from the book that people have been
sending. It keeps me going. It keeps me going. Mechanchim that are writing me, mechanchim that gave it out to all the rebbeim, or parents in the school that gave it out to all the rebbeim for Hanukkah as gifts. It's lechtig. It's just beautiful, and I don't get credit for it. It's just giving you over. It's a leaflet. It's a collection, encyclopedic collection. Volume 1 has about 700 plus stories, and Volume 2 as well. These are thick books. These are really thick, and so it's a lot of stuff, and it just makes you smile every time. But it also ingrains into our minds the beauty of real chinuch. Real chinuch, if you took a video, you could play it at the convention, at the Shluchim conference, at the Torah Musara convention. Very, very seldom would parents or teachers say, whenever I mechanech my children, disciplining my children, I would like that video to be played publicly. And that's the problem. We have to be mechanech the way we would want the video to be shown. Because Torah chinuch is beautiful. It's not rough. It's not tough. It doesn't break. You can't break somebody and build them up. You can't hurt sensitive souls, and everybody's sensitive, even adults. I've seen very sensitive adults being very rough with their children. We think that they're supposed to be tougher than us. Nobody today would daven in a shul that the Rav of the shul embarrasses them in public and calls them out and is rough on them, and they feel that my rabbi of my shul doesn't really like me. Very few people can tolerate that. Why do you think your kids could tolerate that? When you look at them with disgust, that's not Torah parenting. That does more damage than whatever chinuch you think that you're accomplishing. You could hurt a kid much more. If you're working for me and you make $1 million for the company and then you lose $2 million, I don't need you to work for me. If you hurt your kid's self-esteem more than you were mechanech them and taught them, you're doing more damage to the kid. Better that you just don't do any chinuch than to hurt them. How could you hurt somebody's self-esteem? You could be in therapy for 100 years because of that. And you do it in the name of Torah, it makes them hate Torah. There are beautiful stories that are painful of big tzaddikim who couldn't do certain things. They couldn't learn certain things. There's one big tzaddik who he couldn't bench properly because he got it over the head once when he was a kid with benching. And even though he was a Marbitz Torah, and he spoke about this publicly, his name is in the book. He was a Marbitz Torah. He brought a lot of people back. He was very holy. He really was. He when it came to benching, it was like PTSD, like really, like, oh, post-trauma, everything is trauma. No, it's a real thing. And there's no reason to do that. There's no reason to break somebody's spirit when you're trying to build them up. And they know how you feel about them. They know how you think they are. If you think they're be'etzem good, or you think he's a troublemaker and a manipulator and a liar, and you're always taking advantage of me. And sometimes they could be. You still have to make sure that you don't break their spirit. There's a lot of stories, hundreds and hundreds of stories that show that this is not me talking. This is not liberal. This is not America. In our dar, this is Torah's Moshe Sinai that was transmitted to our GEDOLIM from every group.
I guess they were really ahead of their time. They knew what this generation would need so desperately.
I don't know if they were ahead of their time. This is the way it was done 100 years ago and 200 years ago and 400 years ago. They didn't really dummy it up. They just had to fight the trend that after the Holocaust, everybody put together schools. There were Rebbeim in there that were hitting and screaming and yelling, and there was a lot of stuff, and they had to like reveal to us that this is not the way at all. You know, there's a beautiful Nesiv Shalom, Slanim Arabbas Chus Yagid Aleinu. And he gives such practical advice. He says, when you see a child starting to go off the derech, so this is already very, very extreme. Hopefully, most people are not going to have to deal with that. Unfortunately, plenty of people do. And you see what his advice was, and it's like, why not follow Das Torah? He was so close to Chabad. He was so close to his Chassidish Rebbe. He was close to the Litvaks. He was close to everybody across the board. And he rebuilt Chinuch system in Eretz Yisrael. He was known as a master mechanchim. He wrote a sefer called Nesivei Chinuch. It's very small. I really recommend it. It's like even in just 5 chapters, and I have it in English also. But it gives over so much of the Yesodis, the fundamentals. He says that Kesheroim Eitzel Yalad Rachel Begulas Fagros Netiya L'Shchitus. If you see a young child or a teenager that he's starting to go into corruption, whatever that means, we all understand that this is very bad. So what do people say? You got to get a hold of the kid. You got to break the phone. You got to, right? He says, Muchrachim lishleit, but he doesn't say you have to get shlita, you have to get control over the yeled. He says, Muchrachim lishleit beruach. You have to get control over yourself. What kind of chinuch is that? He says, get a hold of yourself, and then what should I do? Ula oyer a love, awaken towards that child. Ahava, v'chemla, love and compassion, beligvul, endless. Even more than you had until now. And then parents are like, so what was my intervention? You don't even need the kid for that. So if you find a kid, God forbid, with a phone under their bed, and it could be schmutz and it could be bad stuff, and they're starting to get into bad stuff, and you want me to get a hold of myself and just awaken love and compassion towards the kid. How does it help the kid? Oh boy, does it help the kid. Because that kid who sees a mother, and especially a father, look at him with disgust. He's ruined. But when you look at him with such love and compassion, he's going through a hard time. What would we be like if we were kids in this generation? Do we really know for sure? Would we sign, I could handle myself better? He has a Nisayan. He's falling in the Nisayan, or he's going through I'm not judging. I have such love for this kid. He's so good. And sometimes parents will be so proud of their kid until they start messing up. And then the disgust, like, don't you know this kid? Where were you by the bris? Like, why weren't you paying attention? Didn't you hold him and love him? And he was 8 and he was 9. He was so cute and wonderful. You're just writing him off because it's American philosophy, teenagehood, and then they're rotten and they turn on you and you got to fight them. You got to control them. He says, no, you're controlling them. And I could tell you, we see that in the category that they'll be in by your love and compassion. Because a kid who's struggling could be here or there. And very often the category that they're in is based on the parents. And before you do anything, we have to know what tzaddikim said on how to deal with it. Rav Pam Zatzal said the same thing. And there's so much that we can learn. We don't have to make stuff up. We don't have to follow the blind following the blind. Like, I have no idea how to deal with this. It's been said. Emunas Chachamim. It works. It works with our kids. Let's follow what our teachers have taught us. And there's so much from wherever you're from, Hasidish, Litvish, Sephardic, so many Sephardic Shemaises, stories in DIVREI Torah from Chacham Maran Ovadia Yosef. It's unbelievable how he thought about children and his students, and tolerance and patience and kindness for the ones who messed up. Unbelievable. I'll tell you one crazy story. And otherwise we'll be here all night. I can go on and on. But one crazy story. There's this girl who went off the derech, and the parents disconnected from her, rejected her. Either they threw her out of the house or she left. A lot of parents say, I didn't throw my kid out. Well, you just made it intolerable to live with. Kids can't live with people who don't like them. No, it's his choice. He can live with the rules or he can find somewhere else to live. Okay, you lost the patient. She detached, and then she had a baby. The doctor in the hospital was a frum doctor, and he sees this Jewish but not religious girl having a baby, no family. So he started to ask her, where are you from? She said where she's from. She says, but my family lives in this other area. And he can't believe it. Oh, you grew up Haredi? You grew up frum? Yeah, but I don't speak to my parents. You know, things didn't work out. I went through a rough patch, and I'm not frum, and they are frum, whatever. And he started to get more information about the parents and the family. And he finds out that they are followers of Chacham Ovadia. That's all. So he went to Chacham Ovadia, listened to this doctor, goes to Chacham Ovadia, and he says, this girl came, she had a baby, I'm the doctor, no family. So he got the information, and he tells the doctor, okay, she's being let out tomorrow from the hospital, tell her to come to my house. They made up a time. He calls up this person who's his follower, his chassid, I guess, his follower. He says, I want you and your wife to come to my house tomorrow at this and this set time. Why? What? Nothing. Just come. They come into the house, and she's there with her baby. And he says, Mazel Tov. This is your grandchild. They didn't know what to do. A daughter that's off the derech, and she had a baby out of wedlock. And he says, we have to treat our children the way we want Hashem to treat us. If we don't accept our children because of what they do, Hashem doesn't accept us. Go home and enjoy your child and your grandchild. Teaches us so much information on what Chacham Ovadia wanted. And what's crazy is his follower, who threw her out and all that struggle, did the opposite of what his Rebbe wanted him to do. Never asked him, because he would have told him not to do it. And he did it in the name of Torah. A lot of times parents or mechanchim or yeshivas are not just saying, I wish a parent would say, if they're going to do something terrible, say, listen, my Torah and my Yiddishkeit and my Hashem wants me to love you, but I'm just very petty. I care about the neighbors more than you. I care about my reputation, and now I'm throwing you out of the house. Horrible, but at least you didn't bring God into it. Like, no, we do it in the name. You brought this tumah into my house. You're not allowed to do this in my house. Who said? Who said? And a lot of it is just rage and pain. It's very painful. But that's not going to solve the problem. That's how we lose kids. And all tzaddikim brought out from Rebbe Elyashiv Zatzal, the oldest gedolim, the poskim, the rebbes, over and over again. What the Rayats told the Lubavitcher Rebbe is unbelievable. He answered the whole sugi of how to deal with people who are not from. He explained how to deal with the whole thing. We don't have to start from scratch. We know the recipe for success. And whatever stage you're at is about raising royalty, has stuff in there. Because it's about anything to do with chinuch, how to treat kids in all ages and stages, the right way, the Torah way, through the eyes of the GEDOLIM. And honestly, I mean, I'm so excited, from this. I don't make money on this. There's no profit, but if there's ever a profit, it goes to the tzedakahs that I help parents and families. But it's open it up, and it just lights up the room. We have basically on every page a call out, a beautiful quote, and it just gets better and better. Volume 2 is amazing. I'm in the middle of writing volume 3. It's fun, makes you smile. It's easy to read, easy to repeat, easy to remember, and it affects the way that we look at other people, not only kids and not only students, really everybody in Klal Yisrael and even ourselves, with kindness and compassion, understanding, love, mercy. That's not liberal. It's very Jewish.
In that sense, it's also a book on self-refinement. You have to change the way you look at things.
100%. We become elevated. We use the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. Every time we do that, we get a mitzvah saseh in the Torah of Alachta B'dracha, following in Hashem's ways, and we get better results. But 100%, we learn self-control. We understand that I cannot hurt the self-esteem of anybody in this world. And therefore, if I feel like I want to, I control myself and say, you know what? I'll deal with this tomorrow when I calm down, or in 3 days. There's no reason a kid can't wait for a punishment for 3 days, and nobody would ever punish the same way 3 days later as they do now. Why? Because what we're doing now is a lot of anger and rage and frustration and pressure and anger, all bad midos. And that gets involved in the Din Torah. I tell parents, you can do whatever you want. Just say 3 days, 72 hours, and I'll decide. And that'll be more emes to help the child, so they realize that he did wrong, and without rage, without anger, it'll help the child. If you're not angry, the kid could accept it from you much more than if he just sees that you're angry and frustrated. So we're dealing with somebody, they do bad, we're judging them like a judge who sees people, but there's no trial, and there's no defense attorney, and there's no due diligence, whatever those words are called, to make sure that, and whatever comes out, comes out. So one parent who is going through a hard time or has anxiety or gets nervous kills their kids 100 times more than the neighbor whose kid did the same thing, but the father or the mother is calmer, happier, smarter. And it's all called chinuch? No. You have anger issues. You get upset. You're frustrated. You're going through a hard time. You have this problem and that problem, but you can't take it out on your kids, even a drop. And yet, you have to do chinuch. So wait 3 days. Wait 1 day. Who says that? The Torah. Do you know how long Yaakov Avinu waited to give Musar to his son Ruvain, the Bechar of the Shvatim? We're not Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov is on the Regel Ashkina. He's on the leg of the chariot of holding up Hashem, whatever that means. Yaakov Avinu loy meis. Yaakov Avinu didn't die. He didn't sin. That's not us. He didn't have an anger problem. He wasn't frustrated. He wasn't worried about the neighbors. You know how I know? There were none. He was the only Jewish family in town, in the world. And his son is the biggest tzaddik, Bechar of the Shiftei Ka. And he made a mistake. And all of a sudden, at the end, when he's about to pass away from this world, he gives Musar to Ruvain. Rashi in Devarim says, by Moshe Rabbeinu, says, why did Yaakov wait? You know how long he waited? 48 years. How long do we wait? 48 seconds? Halavai. Wait 48 seconds. You're off to a good start. 48 minutes. 48 years. Why? So Rashi says, he brings down a medrash, because Yaakov thought to himself, if I'm going to give Musar, I'm going to give Techacha, I'm going to discipline Ruvain, but there's an Esav, there's a bad influence that's hanging around. Maybe he's going to leave me, and he's going to go hook up with Uncle Esav. I better keep my mouth shut. Unbelievable. He's worried about Esav. He's worried about Ruvain, and that's self-control. I want to tell my kids something, but now I got to be careful, because there's some bad friends on the block. You know how many Esav, so to speak, are waiting for our kids on the street? Of Shimshon Pincus, who was nifter in a car accident about, I don't know, I'm guessing 20, 25 years ago, he said, Kayim, in our day, there's harbe anoshim, so many people, shirak mechanchim, sheyeled charedi yupalei tachutza. They're just waiting for a charedi child, a from kid, to go outside. And they say, come with us. We'll love you. We'll take care of you. That's how they convince him. We have to make sure our kids don't want that. We can't afford to just do whatever we want. We gotta think things through. We're playing for keeps. A lot of kids are very sensitive. We gotta keep that in mind. Chanech l'nat al pi darkei means that if you have a sensitive kid who's gonna feel at the end of the discipline different than the other kid, they're gonna feel worse and broken. That's not fair. Fair does not mean equal. Fair means everybody gets what they deserve, what they need, what works for them. So you can't do the same thing for everybody and not think about it. We have to think about it. And then we do better chinuch. And the kid feels, wow, you appreciate me. You're careful with me. You care about me. And that's actually the best chinuch that you can give. That message. I love you. I'm on your side. I care about you. We're in this together. As a father, I'm going to have to do something now. We'll discuss it tomorrow. What's going to be. Okay? And then you give them choices. Because for one kid, going to sleep early, no problem. They love reading. For another kid, that's Gehenna. They don't want to go upstairs before everybody else. Maybe they're scared to be alone. Maybe, I don't know what. A lot of different things. So you give them, say, let's figure out 2-3 choices. When you do that in a negotiating way, kids are very, very fair. I find that kids, when you're calm and they're calm, say, okay, so what are we going to do? How about this? And if they say a little thing, you say, no, it's got to be more than that. This was already the third time. And you smile. And you're like, I'm so sorry I have to do this for you, but it's my job. It's my job. I got to show you right from wrong. Okay, so what are we doing? 10 minutes early? Nah, you got a half hour early, okay? Or let's pick on something else. How about 20 minutes less of this time or that? Or how about, come up with stuff and negotiate with them, and they'll get the punishment. And you could say, I want you to write down that you're sorry to me and you won't do it again. Don't lose your patience on the second time and the 10th time and the 15th time. And always with building the relationship. You are the respirator. You never, ever, 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 ever lower the respirator to accomplish anything else, because then they can't survive. Everything can be done with the Torah way without compromising the respirator. Your connection to your kids has to be constant. Compliments. You're good. You're good. You're wonderful. You're good. And when you hear this from me, it sounds like, really? We didn't get that. Okay. Open it up. Learn authentic chinuch, stories from all of the tzaddikim going back so many generations, and you'll see that it's more effective when we do things the right way. We are builders, not destroyers.
So what does the future look like for Raising Royalty? We have 2 volumes so far.
So Baruch Hashem, one exciting thing is that volume 1 is being translated into Hebrew. So it's going to be great for Eretz Yisrael. And it's also going to be great for all the shuls that don't really have English svarim in them, or people who enjoy reading Hebrew better, and different countries that don't understand English, like Mexico, where they read Spanish or Hebrew. So it's going to be very, very powerful. We're actually looking for sponsors for that. Sponsoring an essay is very reasonable, $100 a month for a year. And you get your own essay with your name on top and a message, which is very, very sweet, very nice. And I'll show you right here. If you can see that, it's a little backwards on the thing, but here, you see on the top part, you get the name and you get a nice dedication. We also have quarter pages, half pages, full pages. No profit is being made. Everything goes for production and being able to market it. And then also I try to give away. We had a sponsor that sponsored, I gave 1,000 books to TORAH Masoret for their convention of mechanchim. So someone sponsored it, give it at cost. And we gave out 1,000 books. Mechanchim, we want every mechanech and every parent in the world should get this. And it's just a huge schus. So we're coming out with Hebrew. We got great new askamis which are great for us also. But for the Israeli market, I ended up just working harder to get more Askamas and show the book and show the Hebrew. It's not edited yet, but it's already translated. And then I hope Hashem will give me the zchus to complete the journey. It should be between 6 and 10 volumes. I'm not really sure how many. And it's a big zchus. It's going to be the biggest encyclopedic collection in the world. And
I've gone through both of them, and they're amazing. Like so many resources. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your time.
I hope everybody enjoys it. And if anybody has any comments, there's an email address in the book. I always appreciate feedback. And b'shem Hashem, Nasa, and Atzliach, everybody should have Yiddish Nachas from our children and our students, and we should do the right thing for them. That's our status, is that we shouldn't be hurting anybody for no reason. There's always a smarter, more wise, calmer way to do whatever we need to do to raise royalty. Just the name is a lesson to remind us. They're not regular kids. Jewish kids have a chelik l'kam imal mamish, and we're raising royalty. We look at them that way. They feel that way. It doesn't create spoiled kids. It doesn't create a baligaiva. It creates wholesome, good kids that can follow in the derech haTorah and withstand all of the challenges. Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein Shlita, he writes, he says, in our days when there's so many different things that are pulling kids out of Kaisley Beis Medrash, that are pulling kids off the derech, we have to remember that the number one derech haya'ila be'yoser, to protect our kids, the number one way is, drumroll, falim shel ahava, cables of love from mom and dad. This is not liberal or American. This is the way we keep our kids solid, with a good self-esteem, able to withstand the challenges, Be'ezrat Hashem. And then if not, for us to be there with them, because the journey is always going to be different. If we're with them, a lot of people make things much worse. Got to be with them for the journey, wherever they go, in order to bring them back home. Hashem should help us. We should be zeichet to him. Mashiach should come, and we should hear the Navi. It says that Eliyahu is going to say, that comes first. The hearts of the parents have to come back. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome.